Welcome back to the channel. So in our previous video, we talked about the famous Larousse Gastronomique. I gave you an overview. If you haven't watched the video, link in the video description. And I did finish the video by saying there's plenty of recipes in that book. And yes, you can use this as a recipe book. But in this video, because I had a French version of the Larousse Gastronomique, I'm going to be using an old UK version in English of that book, just to show you that even if you got an older version, it is not a problem at all. And that, again, is the power of that book. It is quite amazing. But what I like is we can actually eat what we make at the end. So let's go. So here we are. That is a Larousse Gastronomique version from the UK in English, dating from 1989, and it still contains lots and lots of information. And of course, it is in English. For the recipe, I wanted to find something that's going to resonate with many people out there, and I want it to be a bit of a technique because we need to learn things about cooking here at the French Cooking Academy. And the word sauté is really something that I know a lot of people know, and you may have heard Gilles Chai, I think she said once, you need to learn how to sauté before you can flamber. If you don't know what sauté means, what is she meaning? What is this? Well, you open your Larousse Gastronomique, you go to the letter S, you look at sauté, and it says here, to cook meat, fish, or vegetables in fat until brown using a frying pan, skillet, sauté pan, etc. You got more example, sauté potatoes, the sauté of meat, and you got a bit of a definition, okay? So that tells you what sauté is. After that, recipes. It starts here and goes on the next page. So on the next page, the recipes continue. So this is what the old-fashioned sauté lamb, it's a long recipe. Then you got the chasseur, the sauté chasseur, you got the sauté of lamb with artichokes, with eggplant, with mushrooms, with tomato, then you got the clamart, something in red wine, and you got the Portuguese style. I think about 12 recipes you can choose from for your sauté of lamb. And you got a little picture of how it kind of looks like and the kind of pan that is used in there, which is called sauté pan. And you may have heard me saying, oh, the sauté pan, and some people don't know what a sauté pan is. The Larousse Gastronomique continues to really help you out, because here you got the definition of a sauté pan. What is a sauté pan? Well, it tells you there's two styles in French. There's one that's called the sauté. This is kind of a mini stock pot. And then it's telling you that to make sauté in the correct sense of the word, especially those with sauces, a type of sauté pan called a sautoir or a plat sauté is preferred. And guess what? You've got the picture. This is a copper sauté pan. Even more amazing, this is the pan I actually have for that video, the exact same one that we're going to be using. And for the recipe, I wanted to stick to something simple. And I'm going to take here the sauté of lamb with the cèpe mushroom. I'm going to replace the cèpe mushroom with some other mushrooms. And the recipe is based on the same technique as that one. Let's see this into practice, but it's going to make more sense. Let's jump right in for that recipe from the Larousse Gastronomique. This is the sauté of lamb with mushroom, of course, typically made with cèpe or porcini mushroom. I don't have them. I'm using king oyster mushroom instead. You'll find everything listed on the on the recipe, on the link that I've got in the video description, of course. And one thing that is important here, we're using lamb. This is a leg of lamb. So this is half a leg of lamb that I've trimmed, I've deboned, right? I've cut and I diced, and I'm using the bones for the stock that I'm going to show you in a bit. The one thing that you need to pay attention with that recipe is not to confuse the sauté of lamb with a navarin of lamb. The navarin of lamb is a ragout. It's something that is cooked in sauce, sometimes with potato, for a long time, for instance an hour. The sauté dishes are something that is meant to be very fast. It's like a bistro dish. So the whole thing here, the whole idea, we're searing briefly this for 10 minutes maximum the meat. Same for the mushrooms. We deglaze, we add the stock, we reduce, we decorate, we serve. That's the spirit of a sauté dish. Nothing to do with a ragout that you're going to be leaving to stew for hours. Totally different. And this is the kind of little details that you need to be aware of in French cooking, because it all looks the same, I know, from the exterior, but it's not. All right, so let me show you the stock now. Now for the stock, you need a brown stock, and that is going to have to be thickened because the recipe says a gravy. A gravy in English refers to a sauce that has been thickened. In France, it's called fond lié, and you can thicken the stock here with either the beurre manier, and if you're gluten intolerant, you can use arrowroot or corn flour. But look at this stock. You see how beautiful it is? And you may think, oh, something he's been doing for hours. No, this is a store-bought stock that I've enhanced simply by using the bone that I've roasted in the oven and throw in a few carrots, celery, and onion in there. Okay, that's what it is. And you see what I get? This is my secret weapon. It's called a home style demi-glace. I've got a video on it. I'll put it in the link in the video description. And now, let's start the recipe. First step, searing the meat. Remember, 10 minutes max. We just want to brown the meat very quickly. Now, when you're going to put oil in the pan, you can use kind of a high heat, but what I found sometimes when it's a bit wet, it can kind of stick sometimes. So one of the new things that I'm doing, of course, you wash your hands, but I'm adding a bit of olive oil in there. I'm adding a little bit of oil, and I'm going to be kind of massaging first the meat with the salt and pepper into the oil like that, so that when it's going into my pan, it's got that layer, that slight coating of oil, and it kind of helps and prevents too much sticking. Okay, and now let's put this in the pan. So here is the copper pan. I'm starting with olive oil because, you know, in the old days I used clarified butter and oil, and we got only 10 minutes to brown the meat. I start typically on a medium and then crank up the heat very quickly to have the browning effect. Now I'm 7 minutes in. As you can see, the pieces are lightly brown. I'm going to reserve them on the plate and do my second batch. I'm done. I'm going to put this on my plate and I'm going to keep this in the oven at about 50 degrees Celsius to keep the meat warm while we're doing the mushrooms. Now for the mushroom, typically you will do this in another sauteuse, the same kind of dish or a separate dish like I'm doing here. I'm using a non-stick pan. I'm using some olive oil with a little bit of butter. But if you want to make this one pot, you can actually saute the mushroom in the pan that we use for the lamb. But keep in mind that it was very brown in there and it's going to really dirty the mushroom very fast. So the goal is try to have something clean with some nice coloring on here. So I'm going to do them separately, but if you want, you can make them directly in the other pan. Okay, salt and pepper. I'm just going to put a slight kind of light brown coloring on those. Perfect, so that's the kind of coloring I'm going for. I'm going to remove these and then I'm going to put the stalks in. My stalks are ready. I'm going to put this on the plate with the other mushrooms and then keep this again in the oven warm while we're making the stock. Now for the stock, this is something you can do absolutely beforehand, before you even start the meat, etc., etc. Because of the demonstration, I have to include it in here. So we're going to be using a little bit of the tomato, some garlic, the thickening agent, a little whisk, and a spoon. Let's go on the stove. For the stock, I'm going to bring you close to the action, sorry about that. I've filtered my stock through fine mesh sieve. It is now in another pan. It's coming to a simmer on here. And the first thing you would note is that it is, as the stock is, very liquid. Okay? The recipe says that that stock needs to be thickened, but it's also flavored with some tomatoes. So the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to add not too much. It's not a tomato sauce. So here I think maybe a tablespoon. See how it looks like. You see the reddish color already? I think maybe half a tablespoon, so 1.5 tablespoons. And we only need about 100 ml of stock, something like that. So it's not in a big amount of sauce. It's a very short types of sauce, okay? So once we're here, this is too liquid. So what do we need? We need to thicken. For the thickening, I'm going to be using a piece of the beurre manier. So this is 10 grams of butter, 10 grams of flour. I'm not going to use all this. I'm going to go very slowly. So I'm putting little pieces, maybe half of it. Okay. And with a whisk, I need to bring this to the boil absolutely for the thickening to happen. I'm going to keep on whisking and you're going to see the consistency will change. The stock is now boiling and is now transformed into that thickened kind of stock. If you look at the consistency, all what we're after here is a semi-syrupy consistency, not plaster, okay? So it still needs to be semi-liquid. But you see, it's just got that little edge on here, and by reducing it a bit more, it's going to be perfect. Remember, we have to put this in the pan after for deglazing. So what's the last element is the garlic. It says that you need to flavor this with a little bit of garlic. So I've got about 2 cloves. I can start with 1 clove of garlic in here. And then you're going to use your taste buds, and you're going to taste that preparation. So a clean spoon, here up we go. We're going to have to check for the salt, pepper, etc. Yeah, a bit spot on, needs a bit of salt in here and I think a touch of pepper and we're going to be good to go. No need to make something ultra amazing. Remember, we've got the juice of the pan to caramelize and to deglaze. As you would imagine, typically in a restaurant, it's fast, you do one thing after the other. Here I have to decompose, so the pans have got a bit cold. So I'm putting it back on the stove. I'm adding a little bit of butter to get that fat going. And we're going to caramelize, not even much because it's already brown. But as soon as the butter is melted, we're going to be deglazing. So we want a hot pan. And then we're going to add the wine for the deglazing. My butter on here is foaming. I'm not gonna wait any longer. 50 ml of white wine, and the goal is to clean the pan with the wine. And you can use this to detach all of the caramelized juices and put this into the wine. Now that is the action of deglazing. Now one thing about this, the reduction and the deglazing, the wine must be almost gone before you add your stock in. So you're left with the fruitiness of the grapes and a slight acidity, and that's it. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna add my stock in, always pass it through like this, a sieve in here because there's deposits, and something on here. I'm gonna mix everything and continue the sauce. Final touches, we adjust the consistency. That is pretty nice. I've added the rest of my garlic in here to have a fresh taste of garlic. I'm gonna add a touch of tomato, so we are reaching 2 tablespoons of tomato passata in here. And then we're done. Typically, you pass this sauce through a fine mesh sieve over your mix of meats and mushrooms, and you serve and you decorate. Because we're at home, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be filtering the sauce, clean my pan, and put back the meat and the mushroom so I can show you, then we're gonna pour the sauce over for better effect. Now for the assembly, I'm putting this on a medium heat. I'm gonna filter a final time the base of sauce. There's not much sauce. Remember, it's normal. It's not a dish in sauce. It's a little bit of sauce to bind the whole thing. And then I'm gonna add the rest, the meat and the mushrooms. So we've got the pieces of lambs. See, I wish they would be a bit bigger, because you see, they're not as good looking like this when they're small. And then the mushrooms. Once the meat is in, I've got all the mushrooms in here. I've actually been a bit generous on the mushrooms. Maybe I don't have to put everything, but why not? And then you can check the pan if you want, but here the trick is, because it's been in the oven, I typically just warm it up slowly on the stove on here, okay, to warm the whole thing. And then it's just a matter of a decoration, parsley, and the color of the parsley is gonna make the whole thing pop, and then we're done. Here we are, a final touch of parsley before we dish up, and I'm going to be placing this into a dish, and then we're going to add the conclusion, the final talks for that video. So there we have it. The dish is now served. This is the Sauté of Lamb with mushroom from the Larousse Gastronomique. As I told you before, it works. I had to check off the amounts of stuff. I just followed the recipe, and you got a beautiful but simple dish. Now when it comes to the meat, some of the things that I would do differently, I would definitely cut the pieces of legs of lamb in larger portions, so it will look much better when you serve the dish, but also, as I said, when you cook it, it was just gonna give you more time. The quality of your meat also here is paramount. I'm using here a local lamb from a local farmer, which is great because you know what you're getting and it doesn't beat the freshness. And I always like to have the piece of leg of lamb, you debone it yourself and you use the bones for the stock. But that completes the video. I hope you enjoy it, and that completes our little journey on the Larousse Gastronomique and how to use it. I'll see you all next time for another video on the French Cooking Academy. Take care all. Bye bye.